April 1944, a teenager grabs the wrong lever at 450 miles per hour. His P-47 Thunderbolt flips inverted. He has no idea what just happened. 2 weeks later, the United States Army Air Force orders every fighter squadron in Europe to learn exactly what to do. The farm boy's panic becomes the doctrine that will save hundreds of American pilots. This is the story of the lever that changed aerial warfare. Robert Booth is 19 years old. He has 67 hours in the P-47. He has flown 5 combat missions. He is not a natural pilot. His instructors wrote that in his file. Technically proficient, lacks killer instinct, thinks too much, may hesitate under fire. They were partially right and completely wrong. He does think constantly, does calculate obsessively, but when the moment comes over occupied France with controls locked and river rushing up and death approaching in seconds, he will not hesitate. He will panic. And that panic will save his life and hundreds of others who will never know his name. But first you need to understand how a farm boy from Pennsylvania ended up in a cockpit over France preparing to make a mistake that should not work. You need to understand the smell of hay in his father's barn and the sound of his mother's voice calling him to dinner, and the way his sweetheart Eleanor pressed a lucky penny into his palm the morning he left for training. You need to understand that everything that matters happens in the space between what we intend and what we do, between the lever we mean to pull and the lever we actually grab, between surviving and dying. Allentown, Pennsylvania, 1925. Robert Booth grows up on a farm where machines matter more than words. His father repairs tractors and combines for neighboring farms. Teaches young Robert that every engine has a logic. That sounds tell you what is wrong before the machine stops working. That patience and methodology solve problems panic cannot. His mother teaches at the county school. Wants Robert to go to college, study engineering maybe, become something more than a farmer in a county where farms are failing and young men are leaving for cities and factories. Robert is middle child, quiet by nature, methodical by training, the kind of boy who takes apart alarm clocks to understand how springs and gears translate into time, who helps his father diagnose engine trouble by listening to pitch and rhythm of misfiring cylinders, who reads farm equipment manuals the way other boys read adventure novels. At 17, he can rebuild a tractor engine from memory, can calculate fuel mixture ratios in his head, can look at broken machinery and see the sequence of repairs needed to make it whole. This is not natural talent. This is learned patience. This is farm boy logic applied to problems that have solutions if you think about them long enough. 1941 changes everything. Pearl Harbor happens on a Sunday. By Monday, the world is different. By Tuesday, half the boys in Allentown are talking about enlisting. Robert's older cousin joins the Marines. 2 boys from his high school class join the Army. The farm needs him, but the country needs him more. Or so the recruitment posters say. His mother cries but does not argue. His father says simply, "Do your duty and come home." Those are the only words that matter. Do your duty. Come home. Eleanor Hughes has known Robert since grade school. They have been courting for 2 years. She works at First National Bank, keeping ledgers and counting deposits. Saves money for a future they both assume will happen after the war. The week before Robert leaves for training, she walks with him along the creek behind his family's farm. Spring evening, smell of apple blossoms, sound of water over stones. She does not cry, just takes his hand and says, "I will wait, however long it takes. You come back to me." She gives him 2 things. A small American flag pin that belonged to her father who served in France during the Great War. "Pin it on your collar," she says, "so you remember what you are fighting for." And a penny, old Indian head penny from 1897. Her grandfather carried it through the Spanish-American War. Her father carried it through France. Now she presses it warm from her hand into Robert's palm. "It brought them home," she says. "It will bring you home too." He keeps both. The flag pin goes on his uniform collar. The penny goes in his chest pocket over his heart. He will touch both before every mission. Will think of her and the creek and apple blossoms and the life waiting for him if he survives. Last morning home, his mother makes pot roast, his favorite meal. Same recipe she has cooked every Sunday for 18 years. Beef slow roasted with carrots and potatoes and onions until tender enough to cut with fork. Smell fills the small farmhouse. They eat at the kitchen table where 3 generations of Booths have eaten. His father says little, just watches his son and nods slowly as if memorizing this moment. His younger sister cries, makes him promise to write every week. His mother packs the leftovers in wax paper, says, "You will want to remember this taste. Remember home. Remember what you are coming back to." His father walks him to the train station. April morning, cold and clear. They stand on the platform waiting. His father finally speaks. "Son," he says, "machines are logical. They follow rules. War is not logical. Do not expect it to make sense. Just do your job. Keep your head. Come home." They shake hands. Do not embrace. That is not their way. But Robert sees something in his father's eyes that he has never seen before. Fear. Not for the farm or the crops or the machinery. Fear for his son, who is boarding a train that will take him to war where young men die in numbers too large to comprehend. Flight training is harder than expected. Pensacola, Florida. Heat and humidity and endless drilling. Robert solos in reasonable time, but instructors note hesitation. He flies with precision, but without aggression. Scores well on gunnery, but does not engage mock dogfights with enthusiasm. One instructor writes technically proficient, lacks killer instinct. Another writes thinks too much, may hesitate under fire. These evaluations follow him through training. Mark him as competent but not exceptional. A farm boy who can fly but may not survive combat. He washes out of pursuit training first attempt. Too slow to react, they say. Too methodical, needs more aggression. He restarts the program, studies harder, practices more. Barely graduates, near middle of his class, not top, not bottom, just adequate. Good enough to get assignment, but not good enough to get choice of aircraft or squadron. He is assigned to P-47 Thunderbolt training. The Jug, 7 tons of aircraft, 850 caliber machine guns, 2,000 horsepower radial engine, flying tank that can absorb punishment but handles like truck compared to sleek Mustangs. He arrives in England, March 1944, assigned to 63rd Fighter Squadron, 56th Fighter Group, based at Boxted in Essex. The Wolf Pack, they call themselves. Paint wolf heads on their fuselages. Most pilots have 10 to 20 missions. Some have kills, and all have survived longer than many others who came before. They tolerate Robert Booth. Do not trust him yet. Trust is earned in combat. He has stayed in formation during his 5 missions, has followed orders, has not panicked, but has not proven himself either. He flies tail end Charlie, last position in formation, spot reserved for new guys who might not survive long enough to matter. Captain Jack Morrison is his flight leader, 29 years old from Texas, 12 kills painted on his P-47, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with clusters. He looks at Robert Booth and sees a farm boy who thinks too much, tells him simply, "Stay in formation, farm boy, and do not get killed." That is all Morrison expects. That is all most expect from replacement pilots who arrive young and die young and get replaced by other young men who will also probably die young. Lieutenant Frank Kozlowski is the squadron engineering officer, 24 years old from Chicago, Polish immigrant family. Flew 10 combat missions before taking shrapnel in his leg and getting transferred to ground duties. Knows P-47 Thunderbolt inside and out. Has read every technical manual. Understands the aircraft's strengths and its fatal flaw. The flaw that has already killed 4 pilots from the 56th Fighter Group in the past 2 months. The flaw that will kill Harvey Williams in 3 days. Colonel Hubert Zemek commands the 56th Fighter Group. 30 years old. 22 kills. Legendary fighter leader. Silver Star, Legion of Merit. The kind of commander who flies combat missions alongside his men. Who does not tolerate fools but listens to ideas. Who will later become prisoner of war and survive and become general and die old. But right now, in April 1944, he is just trying to keep his pilots alive long enough to win a war that is consuming young men faster than training can replace them. The problem is simple. The P-47 Thunderbolt is magnificent aircraft, can absorb battle damage that would shred lighter fighters, can dive on enemy aircraft from altitude using weight and power. But past 450 miles per hour, it becomes uncontrollable. Compressibility, they call it. Airflow over the elevators changes at high speed. Tail loses authority. Controls lock up. Stick feels like concrete. Rudder pedals will not move. Ailerons freeze. Nose drops and pilot has no way to pull out. Some men have broken ribs trying to haul back on the stick. Others have bailed out rather than ride the dive into the ground. The doctrine is clear. Do not pursue in steep dive. Do not exceed 400 miles per hour. If German dives away, let him go. Live to fight another sortie. It is doctrine born of necessity, born of pilots dying, born of physics that engineers cannot solve. Republic Aviation has tested trim systems and control linkages and hydraulic boosters. Nothing works. The problem is fundamental. The P-47 is too heavy, too fast. And in war, where enemy knows your limitation and exploits it, you either accept the limitation and survive or ignore it and die. Lieutenant Harvey Williams does not accept it. March 2nd, 1944. Bomber escort mission over Belgium. German Bf-109 attacks and then dives away through cloud deck. Williams follows. Witnesses on the ground later report seeing P-47 in near vertical dive. See pilot fighting controls. Aircraft does not pull out. Hits ground at speed that creates crater. Body recovered shows broken ribs where Williams tried to pull back on stick with superhuman force. Did not work. Physics does not care about courage or determination or how hard you pull. Controls were locked. He died fighting them. Robert Booth sees the recovered aircraft that night. Ground crew has brought back what pieces they could find. Most of aircraft is in crater in Belgium, but they recovered the tail section. He walks around it in the maintenance hangar, touches the elevator, moves it with one hand. So light, so responsive. But at 450 miles per hour, this light, responsive surface becomes immovable. He thinks about Harvey Williams pulling with everything he had, breaking his own ribs, dying anyway. That could be me, Booth thinks. Could be any of us. Any dive, any chase. Anytime we forget that physics is stronger than courage. Next morning, Morrison briefs the squadron, shows them the crash report, shows them the math. P-47 at 450 miles per hour terminal velocity and dive. Controls lock up. No recovery possible. Doctrine is clear, he says. Do not pursue past 400. If they dive, let them go. We cannot follow them down and recover. We can only follow them down and die. Questions? No questions. Just acceptance. Physics is physics. Limitations are limitations. Accept them and survive. Ignore them and end up like Harvey Williams. But Robert Booth grew up fixing tractors that should not run. Learned from his father that every machine had logic. Every problem had solution if you thought about it methodically, if you observed carefully, if you listened to what the machine was trying to tell you. The P-47 compressibility problem was not unsolvable. It was just unsolved. The difference mattered. Unsolvable meant accept it. Unsolved meant keep thinking, keep observing, keep listening. Maybe someone would find the answer. Maybe not. But either way, the problem existed, and men were dying because of it, and that seemed wrong to a farm boy who believed problems could be fixed if you understood them well enough. April 18th begins like every combat mission with breakfast that reminds pilots they are American. Powdered eggs and burnt coffee, and if you are lucky, some bacon or toast, not fresh like home, not good, but abundant. Americans have food, have supplies, have industrial capacity that can feed warriors steak, while enemy struggles to feed civilians bread. Material superiority that translates to moral superiority in minds of young men who need to believe their cause justifies killing, they will do when mission begins. Robert sits alone in corner of mess tent, does not talk much before missions, thinks instead, checks mental checklist, touches flag pin on collar, touches lucky penny in chest pocket, thinks of Eleanor and the creek and apple blossoms and the life waiting if he survives this mission and the next and the 100 after that. Thinks of his father's voice, do your job, keep your head, come home. Simple instructions that get harder every mission. Briefing at 0800 hours. Bomber escort to Brandenburg. Heavy flak expected. German fighters probable. Weather poor with cloud layers from 8,000 to 20,000 feet. Visibility under 2 miles. Bombers are late forming up. Fighters will orbit over channel burning fuel waiting. Booth checks his assignment. Tail end Charlie again. Last plane in formation. Spot for new guys who have not earned better position yet. He does not complain. Just nods. Writes down details. Studies the map. Calculates fuel and time and distances the way his mother taught him to calculate in school. Everything is numbers. Everything is mathematics. Even war. Even death. Pre-flight walk to his aircraft. P-47 sits on hard stand waiting. Ground crew has serviced it, fueled it, armed it, loaded 1,400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition and 200 rounds of 20 millimeter. Enough to kill many men if shots are accurate. Enough to bring him home if everything works correctly. He walks around aircraft doing visual inspection his father would recognize, looking for fluid leaks, for damaged panels, for anything that seems wrong. Ground crew chief watches and nods approval. This kid actually checks his plane, the chief thinks. Most just climb in and go. This one looks, this one thinks. Maybe he will survive. Cockpit smells like every P-47 cockpit. Oil and rubber and sweat and leather and fear from previous pilots who sat here and flew missions, and some came back and some did not. He settles into seat worn smooth by bodies of men who preceded him. Straps in carefully. Ritual movements that connect him to every combat pilot in every war. Same motions, same fear, same determination. He touches controls, stick moves freely, rudder pedals respond, throttle smooth, trim tabs set, everything as it should be. Engines start. Pratt & Whitney radio coughs blue smoke, then catches with roar that rattles teeth and shakes airframe. 1,800 horsepower spinning propeller that will pull this 7-ton machine into sky and keep it there through violence and physics and mathematics that he understands better than most. Oil pressure rising, fuel flow steady, magnetos checked, all instruments normal. He advances throttle slightly, engine responds, power available, ready, taxi to runway, formation of 12 P-47s. Booth is number 12. Last plane. He watches aircraft ahead, follows carefully, does not rush, does not crowd, maintains spacing, does what he is told, what he has been trained to do, be competent, be reliable, be forgettable, survive long enough to matter, maybe earn better position, maybe earn trust, maybe survive the war and go home to Eleanor and the farm, and the life that seems impossible from this cockpit on this morning with mission ahead that will require him to fly into flak and face enemy fighters and possibly die before seeing Pennsylvania again. Takeoff. 12 P-47s roar down runway and lift into English morning. Climb through clouds. Form up over channel. Wait for bombers. Burn fuel. Check instruments. Scan sky. Everything routine. Everything familiar. Until it is not. They cross French coast at 10,000 feet. Flak starts immediately. Black puffs stitching sky. Formation tightens. Booth tightens with it. Eyes on plane ahead. Does not look at flak. If you look at it, you start to flinch. If you flinch, you drift out of position. If you drift, you die alone. Stay in formation. Stay alive. Simple mathematics. Somewhere ahead, bombers are hitting their target. Booth cannot see them through clouds. Can only see gray sky and green earth below and white painted belly of P-47 ahead. And then radio crackles. Bandits high and to the north. The call every pilot fears and expects. Enemy fighters inbound. Here we go, Booth thinks. Here we go again. 4 FW-190s come out of the sun. Maybe 5. Hard to count when they are moving that fast. They make one slashing pass through formation and then split. 2 go left, 2 go right. 1 dives straight down through cloud deck. Squadron breaks. Morrison calls hard right turn. Booth follows. G-force shoves him into seat. Vision tunnels. He tightens stomach muscles and grunts against pressure. World is sky and clouds and aircraft ahead. No thought. Just reaction. Just training. Just following. Morrison rolls left and dives. Booth follows. They drop through gap in clouds. Below them, the lone FW-190 is running east at full throttle, 50 feet off ground, following River Valley, using terrain, using speed. Morrison closes fast. Booth closes faster. The Thunderbolt is heavy, and in dive, it builds speed like locomotive. Booth watches airspeed indicator climb, 300 miles per hour, 320, 350. Ahead, Morrison opens fire. Tracers arc toward German. FW-190 snaps into hard left brake and disappears behind line of trees. Morrison pulls up, climbs back toward cloud deck. Booth does not follow. He is fixated on spot where German disappeared. Banks left, drops lower, 200 feet now, can see individual trees, can see church steeple, can see the FW-190 climbing vertically out of valley looping back toward him. Booth fires, does not lead target properly. Rounds fall behind. German rolls inverted at top of loop and dives again, straight down. Using the tactic Germans have used successfully for months. Dive away. Americans cannot follow. Physics prevents it. But Booth is 19 and has 5 missions and does not think about doctrine. Just thinks about German escaping. About letting enemy go. About Harvey Williams, who died trying to do what Booth is about to do. He pushes stick forward. Nose drops. River below rushing up. Airspeed jumps 400 miles per hour. 420, 450. The controls lock up. Stick will not move. He pulls back. Nothing. Pulls harder. Nothing. The nose is dropping steeper. River is a gray ribbon expanding. He can see rapids, can see rocks, can see death approaching at 450 miles per hour. Altitude unwinding, 1,500 feet, 1,200, 1,000. He plants both boots on instrument panel and hauls back with everything he has. Farm boy strength, tractor repair muscles, pure desperation. Stick moves 1 inch. Nose comes up a fraction. Not enough, not nearly enough. He is in 70-degree dive. Controls locked solid. This is how Harvey Williams died. This is how Booth is about to die. Over French River in morning light because he forgot doctrine. Because he chased when he should have broken off. Because he thought he could do what physics said was impossible. And then panic arrives. Pure animal panic that bypasses thought and training. His hand is shaking. Cockpit is vibrating. Whole aircraft feels like it is coming apart. He has half-formed idea. Flaps will slow me down. Reaches for flap lever. Hand shaking so hard he can barely see it. Grabs lever. Pulls it. Wrong lever. Not flaps. Landing gear. The gear doors snap open. Wheels drop into 450 mile per hour slipstream. The deceleration is instant and catastrophic. Like someone cut throttle and threw anchor simultaneously. Like hitting wall. Airspeed bleeds off. Nose pitches up violently. Aircraft shudders. Booth is thrown forward against harness. Head hits gun sight. Vision explodes into stars. Horizon spins. He is inverted. He is climbing. He has no idea what just happened. No idea why he is alive. Just knows he is not dead, and that is impossible but real. He rolls upright by instinct. By training that survives panic. Checks altitude, 3,000 feet, gain 2,000 feet, airspeed 210 miles per hour, controls responsive again, stick moves freely, rudder answers, aircraft flying normally, gear warning light glowing red on panel, he retracts gear, warning light goes out, plane smooths out, he is alive, somehow impossibly, miraculously alive, looks around, no German, no river, just clouds and empty sky, and his hands shaking so hard he can barely hold stick. He touches flag pin on collar, touches lucky penny in chest pocket, thinks of Eleanor, thinks of his father, thinks do your job, keep your head, come home. Just came very close to not coming home, very close to ending up like Harvey Williams, but did not, is alive, does not understand why. Just knows gear dropped and plane decelerated and nose pitched up and he recovered. Cause and effect. But it does not make sense. Gear is not recovery technique, is not in any manual, is not part of any training, was mistake, but worked. He climbs back through clouds, rejoins formation 15 minutes later. Nobody asked where he went. Nobody noticed he was gone. Just another P-47 in formation. Just another pilot who survived another mission. Morrison's voice on radio calling heading home. Fuel state low, mission complete. Return to base. Booth follows, flies carefully, thinks about what just happened, tries to understand, dropped gear, plane decelerated, recovered from impossible dive. There has to be logic, has to be physics. His father taught him machines follow rules. This machine just saved his life by breaking rules, or maybe by following rules nobody understood yet. Landing at Boxted, aircraft down safely, engine shut down. He sits in cockpit longer than usual, hands still shaking. Ground crew chief asks if everything okay. Booth says fine, everything fine. Climbs out, walks to debriefing, says nothing about the dive, nothing about the recovery. Just routine patrol, no contact, uneventful mission. Signs the forms, goes to his barracks, sits on bunk. That night he cannot sleep. Keeps thinking about the sequence, keeps trying to understand. He dropped gear at 450 miles per hour. Gear created drag, massive drag. Drag bled off speed. Speed reduction restored control authority. It is logical. It is repeatable. It is solution to problem that has killed Harvey Williams and others. Solution found by accident, by panic, by grabbing wrong lever, but solution nonetheless. Question is whether anyone will believe a farm boy who grabbed wrong lever and got lucky. Question is whether he can prove it was not luck, but physics. Question is whether telling anyone matters or whether he should forget it and just be grateful he survived. He pulls out writing paper, writes letter to Eleanor, does not mention the dive, does not mention nearly dying, just says mission was routine. Weather was poor, he is fine. Misses her. Thinks about the creek and apple blossoms and the life waiting when war ends. Signs it, seals it, will mail it tomorrow. She does not need to know how close she came to receiving different kind of letter. The kind that says, we regret to inform you. The kind his mother received about boys he knew from school. The kind that ends dreams and starts grief that never fully heals. He touches lucky penny. It brought them home, Eleanor said. Her grandfather. Her father. Now him. Maybe it did. Maybe that is all that matters. That he survived. That he will write again next week. That somewhere in Pennsylvania a girl waits for mail and dreams of future that might actually happen if he keeps surviving missions one at a time until war ends and he comes home. Do your job. Keep your head. Come home. Still the only instructions that matter. Everything else is just details, just mechanics. Just physics of survival in war where young men die and sometimes get lucky and sometimes grab wrong lever and accidentally discover answer to problem nobody else could solve. Tomorrow he will mention it to his flight leader. We'll try to explain what happened. We'll see if anyone listens. We'll see if farm boy's mistake matters to men who fly and fight and die according to doctrine, written by people who never grabbed wrong lever at 450 miles per hour and lived to wonder whether accident was really just accident or whether physics has logic that panic sometimes discovers faster than engineering. But tonight he just lies on bunk, holding lucky penny and thinking about home and trying to stop his hands from shaking, trying to believe he will survive this war, trying to understand what just happened over French River when he grabbed wrong lever and became either very lucky or possibly something more. Morning comes cold and gray over Boxted. Robert Booth wakes before reveille thinking about physics and fear and whether 19-year-old farm boys should tell combat veterans they might be wrong about doctrine. He dresses slowly, checks uniform, flag pin on collar, lucky penny in pocket. These rituals matter more now. Yesterday he nearly died. Today he has to decide whether his survival was accident worth forgetting or discovery worth sharing. His hands are steady now. The shaking stopped sometime during night, but memory remains. River rushing up, controls locked, gear dropping, impossible recovery, physics that saved him when courage could not. Breakfast is powdered eggs that taste like cardboard and coffee that tastes like burnt metal. He sits with his roommate, young pilot from Ohio who has 8 missions. They do not talk much. Booth finally says, I grabbed wrong lever yesterday, pulled gear instead of flaps and dive. Roommate looks up from eggs. And I recovered, Booth says, was at 450 in locked dive. Gear created drag, bled speed, got control back. Roommate stares at him, then shrugs. You got lucky, Bob. Forget about it. Focus on not dying today. But Booth cannot forget his father's voice in his head. Machines do not lie. If it worked once, it will work again. That is logic. That is physics. Problem is proving it. Problem is convincing men who have been flying longer and fighting longer that farm boy who thinks too much has stumbled onto answer they could not find. He finishes breakfast, walks the flight line. Thinks about Harvey Williams, who died 3 weeks ago. About 4 other pilots who died same way in past 2 months. About how many more will die if solution exists and nobody uses it because farm boy was too scared to speak up. Flight leader debriefing happens at 1000 hours. Captain Jack Morrison from Texas sits behind desk covered with maps and mission reports. 12 kills painted on his aircraft. More missions than Booth can count. Combat veteran who has survived when many others died. Booth stands at attention. Morrison does not look up. What do you need? Farm boy voice has that Texas drawl that makes everything sound casual even when it is not. Booth takes breath. Sir, I think I found something yesterday. Morrison still does not look up. Found what way to recover from compressibility dive, sir. That gets Morrison's attention. He looks up, blue eyes hard and skeptical. You found way to recover from lock controls at 450? Yes, sir, Hal Booth explains. The chase, the dig, the lock controls, the panic, the wrong lever, the gear drop, the deceleration, the recovery. Speaks slowly, precisely, the way he would explain tractor repair to his father. Cause and effect, step by step, no embellishment, just facts. Morrison leans back in chair, listens, does not interrupt. When Booth finishes, there is long silence. Then Morrison says, "Son, panic makes you do strange things. You grabbed wrong lever, you got lucky. Plane probably buffeted in some way that broke the lock, or you hit different air, or wind shear, something. But it was not the gear. Gear at 450 would rip doors off, tear wheels out of wells, overstress airframe. You would have crashed different way instead of same way. You got lucky. Be grateful and forget about it." Booth tries to explain the physics. Morrison cuts him off. "Leave engineering to engineers, kid. Your job is stay in formation and follow orders. That is what keeps you alive, not grabbing wrong levers and getting lucky." Dismissed. Booth salutes, leaves, stands outside operations, building thinking. Morrison is experienced. Morrison is combat proven. Morrison is probably right that farm boy who barely graduated flight school does not know better than Republic aviation engineers who designed the aircraft. Probably right, but possibly wrong. And possibly wrong matters when men are dying. 2 days pass. Booth flies another mission. Escort to Frankfurt. Heavy flak. No fighters. Uneventful. He thinks about the dive, about the gear, about whether to try again, about whether mentioning it again will mark him as fool who does not listen. His father would try again, would not give up on solution just because first person dismissed it. Machines have logic. Problems have solutions. You just have to find right person who will listen. Lieutenant Frank Kozlowski is engineering officer, 24 years old, Polish family from Chicago. Flew 10 missions before taking shrapnel and leg. Now walks with slight limp and handles ground duties. But he knows P-47 Thunderbolt, has read every technical order, every modification bulletin, every crash report. He understands the aircraft in ways pilots who just fly them do not. Booth finds him in maintenance hangar examining propeller that came back damaged. Booth waits until Kozlowski finishes inspection, then approaches. "Lieutenant, may I ask you something about the P-47? Kozlowski looks up, Polish features. Dark eyes, intelligent and patient. "Sure, Booth." "What is it?" Booth explains again. The dive, the gear, the recovery. Tries to keep emotion out of it. Just physics, just mechanics, just question about whether it is possible. Kozlowski listens carefully, does not interrupt. When Booth finishes, Kozlowski walks to tool bench, pulls out technical manual, opens to section on landing gear specifications, reads aloud, maximum gear extension speed 200 miles per hour. Beyond that, structural damage probable. Doors may separate. Wheel assemblies may fail. Hydraulic lines may rupture. At 450, you were doing more than twice safe speed. He looks at Booth. Interesting idea, though. Gear creates enormous drag, probably 800 pounds of force at that speed. More. Would definitely decelerate aircraft. Would probably restore control authority by bleeding off speed. Problem is, it would probably also destroy gear mechanism. Rip components off, maybe overstress wing structure. And if gear does not retract afterward, you are slow and draggy sitting duck in middle of combat zone. Booth nods. I understand the risk, sir. But I was at 800 feet in 70-degree dive, locked up solid. I am standing here talking to you because that gear dropped. Dropped. Should be dead. Am not. Has to mean something. Kozlowski is quiet for a moment, then says, I will tell you what. I will pass this up chain. We'll write it up as possible emergency procedure. We'll note that you survived it. But I will also note all the risks, and I will recommend against testing unless group commander approves. That fair? Booth says, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Walks away thinking that is end of it. Engineering officer will write report. Report will get filed. Nobody will read it. Nothing will change. Men will keep dying in compressibility dives because farm boys' panic does not count as valid data. 3 days later, he gets called to group commander's office. Colonel Hubert Zemke wants to see him. Booth has never spoken to Zemke, has only seen him at briefings. Legendary fighter leader, 30 years old but seems older. Has that look combat veterans get? Eyes that have seen too much death. Voice that expects obedience. Wall behind his desk covered with photographs. Zemke with Eisenhower. Zemke with Patton. Zemke with Doolittle. Men who decide how wars are won and young men die. Booth stands at attention waiting. Zemke looks up from paperwork. Booth, sit down. Engineering officer says you have idea about compressibility recovery. Explain it to me. Booth sits. Explains again. Third time telling this story. Should be easier, but is not. Each time he wonders whether he sounds like fool. Whether panic at 450 miles per hour scrambled his thinking. Whether he should have stayed quiet and been grateful he survived instead of suggesting he knows better than everyone else. But he tells it. The dive, the lock controls, the wrong lever, the recovery. Speaks slowly and precisely because that is only way he knows how to speak. Zemke asks specific questions. How fast were you going when you dropped gear 450, sir? Maybe 460. Hard to be exact when you think you are dying. How much altitude did you lose before recovery? Maybe 500 feet, sir. From 3,000 to 2,500. Though I gained back to 3,000 after nose pitched up. Gear retracted normally afterward. Yes, sir. Completely normal. No damage, no problems. Flew rest of mission and landed fine. Zemke writes notes, does not look at Booth while writing, just processes information like mathematician working equation. Long silence. Zemke puts down pen, leans back in chair, looks at wall chart showing squadron losses. 14 P-47s lost past month, 6 from compressibility dives. 6 pilots dead trying to follow Germans down. 6 families receiving telegrams. 6 empty places at mess tables. He looks back at Booth. You know what you are suggesting, Lieutenant? You are suggesting we deliberately deploy landing gear at speeds that could destroy aircraft. If you are wrong, we lose planes, we lose pilots, we lose credibility with higher command who already think fighter groups are reckless. But if you are right, he pauses. If you are right, we might save lives, might give our pilots advantage Germans think we cannot have, might change how this air war is fought. Zemke stands, walks to window, looks out at flight line where P-47s sit waiting for next mission. I will tell you what we are going to do, Booth. We are going to test it. Controlled conditions, high altitude, chase plane with camera. You will do 3 dives, 3 different speeds, 450, 460, 470. If gear holds and you recover all 3 times, we will teach it to squadron. If gear fails or you cannot recover or anything goes wrong, we will bury this idea and never speak of it again. Agreed. Booth says, yes, sir. When, sir? April 25th, 3 days from now, weather permitting. And Booth, if this works, you just saved a lot of lives. If it does not work, well, let us hope it works. Booth leaves office feeling weight of what just happened. In 3 days, he will deliberately dive P-47 to speeds that have killed other pilots. Will pull lever that should destroy landing gear. Will either prove that farm boy panic discovered something valuable, or prove that farm boy panic was just panic and luck. Either way, his life depends on physics being consistent, on gear holding, on recovery working. 3 times, at 3 different speeds, with camera recording everything. If he fails, he dies. If he succeeds, he changes doctrine. No middle ground, just success or death. That night, he writes letter to Eleanor. Does not tell her about test. Does not want her worrying. Just says he is fine. Weather has been poor. Missions routine. Thinks about her constantly. Dreams about creek and apple blossoms and life after war. Keeps it light. Keeps it hopeful. She does not need to know that in 3 days he will dive toward Earth at 470 miles per hour, trusting physics he does not fully understand. She just needs letters that prove he is alive and coming home. That is all letters are for. Proof of life. Promise of return. News spreads through squadron anyway. Morrison stops him at mess tent. So Colonel is actually testing your idea. Farm boy, yes sir. Morrison shakes his head. You are either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. Hope you are brilliant. Hope you survive. We need pilots who think, even if you think too much. Other pilots react differently. Some mock him. Farm boy thinks he is engineer now, going to kill himself, proving he got lucky. Others are curious. If it works, it changes everything. If it works, we can follow Germans anywhere. If it works, we stop losing pilots to lock the controls. Big if, though, real big if. Only Kozlowski supports him openly. Finds Booth in barracks night before test. Brings technical drawings of gear mechanism. Shows him failure points. Explains what could go wrong. Doors could separate. Wheels could tear out. Hydraulic lines could rupture. Structure could overstress. But, and this is important, Booth, but drag calculations support your theory. At 450 gear creates approximately 800 pounds of force, more at higher speeds. That is massive deceleration. That is enough to bleed speed fast. Fast enough to restore control authority. Fast enough to recover. If gear holds, if structure holds, if hydraulics hold, then physics is on your side. You are not crazy. You are not lucky. You found answer hiding in emergency that nobody thought to look for. That helps. Knowing engineering officer believes physics supports theory. Knowing it is not just farm boy panic, but actual aerodynamic principle. Drag equals deceleration. Deceleration equals speed reduction. Speed reduction equals control restoration. Simple equation with life or death consequences. Booth thanks Kozlowski. Tries to sleep. Cannot. Lies on bunk thinking about tomorrow. About diving toward Earth 3 times. About trusting gear mechanism designed for 200 miles per hour to survive 470. About camera recording everything so if he dies, at least the data will survive. At least someone will know whether theory worked. Whether Farm Boy was right or just lucky once and dead the second time. Morning of April 25th comes cold and clear. Perfect visibility. No clouds. No excuses. Weather is good. Test will happen. Booth dresses carefully. Checks uniform. Flag pin. Lucky penny. Eats breakfast he does not taste. Walks to flight line where his P-47 waits. Ground crew has gone over it completely. Every system checked. Every component verified. Camera plane is ready. Pilot is ready. Only question is whether Booth is ready. Whether Farm Boy who thinks too much can actually do what theory says is possible. Entire squadron is watching from operations building. Morrison stands with arms crossed. Zemke stands next to him. Kozlowski has binoculars. They will watch from ground. Camera plane will record from air. Either way, Booth will dive 3 times, will pull gear 3 times, will recover 3 times or die trying. Simple test, simple stakes. Physics versus doubt. Theory versus reality. Farm boy versus fear. He climbs into cockpit, straps in, goes through checklist automatically. Hands are steady. Mind is clear. This is just flying, just diving, just pulling lever and trusting physics. Same physics that governs tractors and engines and everything else his father taught him to trust. Machines follow rules. Gear creates drag. Drag bleeds speed. Speed reduction restores control. It worked once, will work again, has to work again. He starts an engine. taxis to runway, takes off into morning sky. Camera plane forms up 500 feet above and behind. Pilot gives thumbs up, ready when you are. Booth climbs to 20,000 feet, levels off, takes deep breath, thinks of Eleanor, thinks of his father, thinks do your job, keep your head, come home. This is the job now, proving theory, testing physics, finding out whether panic discovered truth or just got lucky once. He advances throttle, rolls into dive. 30 degrees, 40, 50, airspeed climbs, 300, 350, 400. Controls begin to stiffen. 60 degrees now, 65, 420, 440, 450. Controls lock. Stick will not move. Rudder frozen. This is it. This is moment. Theory says gear will work. Fear says you are going to die. He reaches for landing gear lever, hesitates for a fraction of a second. What if Morrison was right? What if this was luck? What if gear rips off and you crash different way? What if Farm Boy was wrong, but Harvey Williams died because he did not have option? Died pulling on stick that would not move. Died fighting physics that could not be beaten with courage. If this works, other pilots will have option. Will have chance. Will have way to survive what should not be survivable. Booth pulls gear lever. Doors snap open. Wheels drop into screaming slipstream. Drag hits like wall. Aircraft shudders violently. Nose pitches up hard. G-force crushes him into seat. Vision grays at edges, but controls come alive. Stick moves. He pulls back, nose rises. Dive shallows. 40 degrees. 30. 20. Level. He is at 14,000 feet. Lost 6,000 in less than 10 seconds, but recovered. Theory proven. He retracts gear. Normal operation, no damage, no problems. Climbs back to 20,000. Camera plane pilot gives thumbs up. 1 down, 2 to go. Booth does it again. 460 this time. Same result. Violent but controlled. Deceleration massive but survivable. Recovery at 13,000 feet. Gear retracts normally. 3rd time. 470. Fastest yet. Aircraft shakes so hard he thinks wings will separate. But gear holds. Structure holds. He recovers at 12,000 feet. 3 dives, 3 recoveries. 3 proofs that theory works. That physics is consistent. That Farm Boy panic was not luck, but discovery. He lands at 10:30. Hands are shaking again. But this time from adrenaline, not fear. Ground crew applauds when he climbs out. Morrison walks up, extends hand. I was wrong about you, Farm Boy. Dead wrong. You just changed how we fight this war. Zemke is already walking toward operations building, going to call meeting of squadron commanders, going to show them camera footage, going to authorize technique for emergency use, going to spread it through fighter groups. Because Farm Boy from Pennsylvania, who thought too much and grabbed wrong lever, just solved problem Republic Aviation could not solve. Just gave American pilots way to follow Germans anywhere. Just saved lives that have not been lived yet. But Booth does not think about that standing on flight line with hands shaking and heart pounding. Just thinks about how close he came to dying 3 times this morning. How physics worked when courage would have failed. How theory translated to survival. How mistake became doctrine. His father would understand. Machines follow rules. Problems have solutions. You just have to trust the logic even when fear says, run. You just have to pull the lever even when common sense says it will kill you. Sometimes panic finds answers engineering misses. Sometimes farm boys discover what experts cannot. Sometimes wrong lever is exactly right lever. You just have to survive long enough to prove it. Within 2 weeks, every pilot in 56th Fighter Group has practiced the technique. Within a month, it spreads to 4th and 78th Fighter Groups. By June, it is taught at replacement training units in England. New pilots arriving in theater learn it before their first mission. By August, it appears in official pilot's handbook as approved emergency procedure. A 19-year-old second lieutenant who grabbed wrong lever has rewritten doctrine, changed how P-47s fight, given American pilots advantage Germans cannot counter, turned panic into innovation, turned mistake into salvation. And he did it by thinking like Farm Boy, by trusting physics over fear, By believing machines follow rules even at 470 miles per hour, even when everyone says recovery is impossible. The question now is whether it will work in actual combat, whether pilots will remember technique when diving after Germans, whether gear will hold under combat conditions, whether theory proven at altitude translates to survival at low altitude under fire with enemy ahead and death behind, and only seconds to decide whether to trust Farm Boy's discovery or accept doctrine that says let them go. That question will be answered soon, because war does not pause for testing. War does not wait for perfect conditions. War just keeps killing until someone finds better way to survive it. And Robert Booth just found better way. Now he has to hope other pilots will trust it, will use it, will live because of it, because otherwise all this was just Farm Boy getting lucky 3 times instead of once. And luck runs out eventually. Physics does not. Between May and September 1944, loss rates in high-speed diving engagements dropped 18% across 8th Air Force Thunderbolt units. 18%. Sounds small? Is not. 18% means approximately 30 pilots who should have died in locked dives recover instead. 30 men who write letters home. 30 families who do not receive telegrams. 30 futures that continue. Numbers that do not capture what it means to pull gear at 460 and feel controls come alive and know Farm Boy's panic just saved your life. Numbers never capture that. June 7th. Normandy invasion 3 days old. Lieutenant James Bradley from 4th Fighter Group pursues FW-190 over French coast. German pilot knows Americans can follow now, but dives anyway. Desperation or habit. Bradley follows to 480, drops gear, recovers at 3,000 feet, climbs back, shoots German down, writes in mission report that without technique, he would have either broken off or crashed. Uses word technique, not luck, not panic, technique. Farm Boy's mistake has become legitimate tactical procedure with name and documentation and pilots who trusted enough to bet their lives. July 14th, Captain Frank Murphy from 56th Fighter Group experiences. Elevator trim malfunction during combat. Controls lock up at 390. Too slow for compressibility, but same effect. Remembers Booth technique. Drops gear. Massive drag compensates for trim failure. Recovers. Lands safely. Aircraft is repaired and returned to service. Murphy survives war. Becomes airline pilot. Flies commercially for 30 years. Retires with grandchildren who exist because Farm Boy grabbed wrong lever and Frank Murphy remembered it when his own controls failed. August 22nd. First Lieutenant Richard Martinez from 78th Fighter Group uses technique twice in same mission. First time chasing BF-109. Second time when caught in compressibility during evasive maneuver. Survives both. Lands with damaged gear that barely retracts. Ground crew finds stress fractures in wheel wells. Aircraft is grounded for repairs. Martinez is grounded for nothing. Walks away intact. Writes letter to wife in Texas saying, "Today I cheated death twice using tricks some kid invented." Does not know kid's name. Does not matter. Technique saved him. That is all that matters. But technique is not without risk. Gear mechanism is not designed for high-speed deployment. There are cases where gear doors damage. Cases where one wheel extends and other does not, creating asymmetric drag and violent yaw. At least one case where gear does not retract afterward and pilot has to nurse damaged aircraft back across channel on half fuel praying he makes it. Most times it works. Sometimes it works imperfectly. Rarely it fails completely. But even imperfect success is better than certain death. Even damaged gear is better than locked controls and crater in French countryside. Pilots learn to accept the risk. Learn to trust physics even when physics is violent and terrifying and might break aircraft while saving pilot. Better broken aircraft than dead pilot. Mathematics is simple even when emotions are not. German intelligence notices by late summer. Luftwaffe reports from September reference American pilots recovering from dives that should have been fatal. They do not understand mechanism, just know it is happening. Some German pilots begin avoiding diving away from Thunderbolts. They know Americans have developed counter to their best escape tactic. No vertical advantage is gone. Psychological edge shifts. Small thing. One technique, one control input. But in war of inches, small things accumulate into strategic advantage. Americans can chase anywhere now. Germans can run, but cannot hide in dives anymore. Changes calculation of engagement, changes tactics, changes outcomes. Hauptmann Werner Stolz from Jagdgeschwader 26 is captured, December 1944, after bailing out over Belgium. During interrogation, he mentions American recovery technique. Says we were told thunderbolts could now follow us into dives. We did not believe it at first. Physics said impossible. But then we saw them recover from dives that should have killed them, saw them climb back and continue fighting. We stopped using diving escape, had to fight them at altitude instead. At altitude, Thunderbolt is nearly as good as our 109s. They took away our best tactic, made us fight their fight. That is when we knew we were losing, when physics changed sides. Robert Booth uses technique twice more before war ends. September over Belgium, chasing FW-190 that dives desperately. Booth follows to 480, drops gear, recovers 3,500 feet, climbs back. German is gone. Escaped during recovery. But Booth survived. Proved technique works under combat conditions. Second time is March 1945 near Berlin. Escorts bombers. BF-109's attack. One dives through formation. Booth pursues to 470, drops gear, violent deceleration, recovers. But by then, German is out of ammunition and fleeing. Gets away. Does not matter. Technique worked. Booth lived. That is only statistic that matters to him. War ends May 1945. Germany surrenders. Celebrations across Europe and America. Dancing in streets. Kissing strangers. Future suddenly possible again. Robert Booth has flown 62 combat missions. 2 confirmed kills. 3 probables. Not ace, not legend, just pilot who survived when many others did not. Receives Distinguished Flying Cross for actions developing recovery technique. Receives Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters for missions flown. Promoted to first lieutenant. Gets orders home July 1945. War in Pacific still ongoing, but his war is over. Europe is won. His part is finished. Time to go home. Separation processing happens in stages. Turn in equipment. Sign papers. Receive discharge documents. Medals go in box. Uniform goes in closet. Civilian clothes feel strange after 3 years of military life. Train from New York to Pennsylvania takes all day. He watches countryside pass. Farms and small towns, and America that continued existing while he was gone, fighting. Looks same, is different. He is different, cannot explain how. Just knows that boy who left for training and man returning are not quite same person, even though they share same name and same body and same memories. Eleanor meets him at Allentown Station. August afternoon, heat and humidity, and her standing on platform in yellow dress, looking exactly as he remembered and also somehow different. 3 years of letters and longing, and now here she is, real and solid and waiting. They embrace, do not speak for long moment. Just hold each other while other returning soldiers reunite with families around them. Finally, she pulls back, looks at his face, says, "You are home." That is all. You are home. Simple words that mean everything. They marry September 1945. Small ceremony at Valley Friends Church where his parents married, where he was baptized, where his father's funeral was held. Continuity of place and tradition and life that war interrupted but did not destroy. Morrison comes from Texas wearing dress uniform. Kozlowski comes from Chicago with new wife. Zemka sends telegrams saying, "Congratulations, Lieutenant. You saved more lives than you will ever know. Now go live yours." Booth reads it and feels weight of responsibility he does not want. Saved lives, changed doctrine, made difference. Should feel proud, feels mostly relieved it is over. Relieved he survived. Relieved he can stop being warrior and become something else. Farmer maybe, mechanic, husband, father, and anything except pilot who kills. They rent small house in Allentown. He gets job at Bauer John Deere dealership repairing tractors and combines. Same machines he worked on before war. Same smells of grease and diesel. Same sounds of engines running rough, then running smooth after he fixes them. Same satisfaction of solving mechanical problems. Different man doing the work. He does not talk about war at work. Coworkers know he served, know he flew fighters, do not know about technique or missions or kills. He prefers it that way. Prefers being just another mechanic who knows engines. War was 3 years. Rest of life will be longer. No reason to define himself by shortest part. Eleanor asks sometimes about his service, asks if he wants to talk about it. He says not much to tell. Flew missions, came home. She can see there is more, but does not push. Knows he will talk if he needs to. Knows silence sometimes heals better than words. They build life around work and church, slowly saving money for house they might buy someday. Normal life, quiet life. Life his father would recognize. Work hard, come home, eat dinner, go to bed, repeat. Simple rhythm that feels like peace after chaos of war. Robert Jr. is born 1947. Eleanor Marie in 1949, David in 1952. 3 children who grow up knowing father flew in war, but not knowing what that meant. They ask questions. Did you shoot down Germans? A few. Were you scared every day? Did you kill anyone? Voice gets quiet. Yes. Some do not want to talk about that. They learn not to ask. Learn father has places inside him that stay closed. Parts of him that war-marked and he does not share. They accept this. Children accept what parents give them and build understanding around the gaps. 1963. Robert Jr. is 16, finds box in attic while looking for baseball equipment. Opens it. Inside are medals and flight logs and photographs of young man in uniform who looks like his father but also does not. This father smiles, looks confident, looks like someone who has not yet learned what killing costs. He brings box downstairs. Dad, what is this? Booth looks up from newspaper. That is old stuff from war. Junior pulls out Distinguished Flying Cross. What is this for actions in combat? What actions? Booth is quiet. Then says develop technique that helped other pilots. What technique? Robert thinks about saying nothing. About taking box back to attic. About keeping war separate from life after. But son is 16, old enough to understand, old enough to hear truth even if truth is complicated. They sit at kitchen table, same table where family eats dinner every night. Booth tells story he has not told in 18 years. About diving after German, about controls locking, about grabbing wrong lever, about discovering recovery technique, about testing it, about saving others who used it. Speaks slowly and without emotion. Just facts, just sequence of events. Robert Jr. listens, says, Dad, that is amazing. You invented something, saved people. Why do you never talk about it? Long silence. Booth touches coffee cup, says because 18 pilots in my squadron did not come home. Harvey Williams died 3 weeks before I figured out how to survive lock dive. If I had been smarter or faster or thought of it sooner, maybe Harvey lives. Maybe others too. I did not invent anything. I got lucky. Luck is not worth bragging about when good men died. That night, Eleanor finds him in garage, small workshop where he works on projects, repairs neighbors' lawnmowers for free, fixes things because fixing things makes sense when world does not. He is holding Lucky Penny, Indian head penny she gave him before training, staring at it. She says you still think about them, about the men who died. He nods. Every day, some days more than others. She sits next to him on workbench, says you did your part. You cannot save everyone. He says, I know, but knowing does not make it easier, does not make Harvey's face go away, does not make me stop wondering, what if I had thought of it sooner? What if I had been smarter? What if I had saved them too? She takes his hand, says you came home, you raised 3 children, you fix engines that help farmers feed families. That is good life. That is enough. He squeezes her hand, says I hope so. I really hope so. 1973 brings letter from Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. They are researching history of P-47 tactical innovations during World War II. Records show gear extension recovery technique originated with 56th Fighter Group, April 1944. Mission reports trace it specifically to Robert Booth. Technique credited with saving numerous aircraft and pilots. later adapted for jet fighters in 50s and 60s. Remains case study in emergency flight control recovery. Would he be willing to be interviewed? Eleanor insists he go, says you never talk about it, but maybe you should. Maybe talking helps. Maybe people should know. He drives to Dayton. Small office in museum basement. Historian with tape recorder and notepad. Young man, probably 30. Probably was not born when Booth was grabbing wrong lever over France. Booth sits. Historian asks questions. Booth answers same way he answered Zemke 29 years ago. Slowly, precisely, no embellishment. The die, the panic, the wrong lever, the recovery, the testing, the spread through squadrons. Speaks like describing tractor repair. Mechanical, factual, distant. Historian asks, did you know at the time it was important? Booth says no. Thought I made mistake and got lucky. Did not realize it was repeatable until we tested it. Did not realize it would spread or become doctrine or matter beyond my squadron. Just thought maybe it helps someone. Maybe one pilot survives who would not have. That seemed worth testing. Historian writes notes. Asks, are you proud of it? Long silence. Booth looks at hands. Mechanic's hands, scarred from years of tools and engines and honest work. Finally says, I am proud that it helped. That is all. That it helped some pilots survive who might not have. Beyond that, it was just panic and physics. I grabbed wrong lever. It worked. I tested it. Others used it. Some lived because of it. That matters. My pride does not. Historian asks one more question. Why did you never fly again after war? Booth has been asked this before. By Eleanor. By his children. By Morrison when he visited 1961. Always deflected, always changed subject. But sitting in museum basement with tape recorder running and historian waiting, he decides to answer truthfully. Because every time I was in cockpit, I was 19 again. I was Harvey Williams falling. I was German pilot I shot down over Belgium. I was all the pilots who did not make it home. Flying was not just flying anymore. It was carrying ghosts. And I would rather remember the farm, remember fixing tractors with my father, remember teaching my sons how to change oil. The good parts, the parts that built things instead of destroying them. Historian stops writing, looks at Booth with something like understanding, says that makes sense. Thanks you for your time, for your service. Interview becomes part of museum archives. Booth drives home thinking about ghosts, about how some men carry war forever and others put it down and walk away. He put it down. He chose garage over cockpit, chose fixing over flying, chose living over remembering. Maybe that was right choice. Maybe it was cowardice. Maybe it was wisdom. Does not matter now. Choice was made. Life was lived. Cannot change it even if he wanted to. February 1991. Robert Booth is 66 years old. Heart disease diagnosed previous year. Treatment helps but cannot cure. Mortality becomes real in a way it was not even during war. During war he might die. Now he will die, just question of when. He sits in living room with Eleanor on winter evening. Children are grown with families of their own. House is quiet. Just two people who have been together 46 years. She asks question she has wanted to ask for decades. What do you want people to remember about you? He thinks about that, about legacy, about monuments and recognition, and whether any of it matters. Says, I want them to remember I was decent husband, good father, honest mechanic, that I showed up to work, fixed what was broken, came home to you, raised our children, lived quiet life without hurting anyone. That is enough. That is legacy worth having. She says, what about the technique? What about saving all those pilots? He shakes his head. That was 3 years out of 66, was important, was meaningful, but was not who I am. Who I am is man who fixed tractors in Pennsylvania for 40 years. Man who loved you. Man who taught his sons to be decent. That is real legacy, not what I did in war, what I did after. He dies 2 weeks later, February 14th. Heart failure. Peaceful at home. Eleanor holding his hand. 3 children present. 7 grandchildren in next room being quiet because grandfather is dying. Last words are tell the boys to keep the tractors running. Not about war, not about flying, not about technique that saved hundreds. About tractors, about continuing work, about simple, honest labor that builds and maintains and fixes. That is what matters in end. Not glory or recognition or credit, just work done well and family loved and life lived with dignity. Obituary in Allentown Mornings Hall runs 3 paragraphs. Robert Booth, 66, longtime mechanic at Bauer John Deere dealership. Veteran of World War II, served as fighter pilot in European theater. Survived by wife Eleanor, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. Services at Valley Friends Church, no mention of technique, no mention of lives saved, no mention of doctrine changed. Just mechanic who served and came home and lived quietly. Most people reading it have no idea what he did. Do not know about April 25th, 1944. Do not know about dives and gear and physics discovered through panic. Do not know that their freedom to read obituary in peace was purchased partly by men like him who fought and came home and never asked for recognition. But pilots know. Colonel James Bradley, retired, calls Eleanor. Says, I heard about Bob's passing. I flew with 4th Fighter Group, June 3rd, 1944. His technique saved my life. I went on to fly 47 more missions, shot down 8 more Germans, came home, raised 4 kids. My grandchildren exist because of what Bob discovered. He never asked for credit, never sought recognition, just went home and fixed tractors. That is kind of man he was. Eleanor thanks him, hangs up, sits quietly thinking about husband who saved hundreds and never mentioned it, who carried burdens silently for 46 years, who chose ordinary life and made it extraordinary through simple decency. Funeral brings surprises. 60 former Thunderbolt pilots attend. Old men now, white-haired and slow-moving. But they come from Texas and California and Florida and Maine. They come because word spread through veteran networks. Robert Booth died. The Robert Booth, the one who grabbed wrong lever, the one who changed everything. They come to pay respects, to say goodbye, to acknowledge debt they never mentioned while he lived because he did not want acknowledgement. Morrison speaks, 90 years old, cane and hearing aid and voice still carrying Texas drawl, says, I told Bob he thought too much, told him to forget about his idea, told him he got lucky. I was wrong, he was right. His technique saved hundreds of us, changed how we fought, gave us an advantage we desperately needed. But Bob never bragged, never sought credit, just went home to Pennsylvania and fixed tractors and loved his family. That is real heroism, not combat, not kills, coming home and living well. Bob did both. We should all be so lucky. Kozlowski speaks, 88 years old, traveled from Chicago, says Bob came to me with idea nobody believed, said he grabbed wrong lever and it worked. I did math. Physics supported it. We tested it. It worked. It spread. It saved lives. Bob made difference not because he was brave, but because he was methodical. Because he thought like engineer even though he was farm boy. Because he trusted physics over fear. That farm boy logic saved more pilots than any ace with 20 kills. And he did it by admitting he got lucky than proving luck was actually physics. That takes humility most of us lack. Bob had it in abundance. Eleanor speaks last. Says Bob carried war inside him for 46 years. Carried faces of men who died. Carried guilt about Harvey Williams who died before Bob found answer. Carried weight of knowing his panic saved hundreds, but could not save friends next to him. That burden never left. But he carried it with grace. Raised children who became decent people. Fixed thousands of engines. Helped neighbors. Loved me. Lived good life despite ghosts. That is his legacy. Not technique, not medals, not recognition. Life lived with dignity despite cost. Life that honored men who died by living well. That is what he wanted. That is what he did. Medals and flight logs are donated to Marine Corps Museum. Wait, wrong service, Air Force Museum, displayed with camera footage from test flight, notes showing calculations and prayers, equipment list showing flag pin and lucky penny. Visitors can read about technique, can watch grainy footage of P-47 diving and recovering, can understand physics of drag and deceleration, can see numbers of lives saved, can know that farm boy panic became doctrine taught for 50 years. That is history preserved. That is legacy documented. But it is not complete story. Complete story is in gap between what museum shows and what Bob felt, between technique that worked and burden that remained, between success measured and cost carried. That gap is where real story lives, where human experience transcends tactical innovation, where 19-year-old boy becomes man who spends lifetime wondering if he did enough. Modern Air Force still teaches principle. Not gear extension exactly because modern jets have different mechanisms, but core concept remains. Use drag to regain control in high-speed emergency. Increase surface area. Bleed energy. Restore authority. That is booth technique translated to jet age. F-16 pilots learn it. F-18 pilots learn it. Modern fly-by-wire systems incorporate principle into emergency procedures. Direct lineage from farm boy grabbing wrong lever to computerized recovery systems on fifth-generation fighters. He would find that funny, probably. Farm boy from Pennsylvania who barely graduated flight school, becoming foundational element of fighter doctrine, taught worldwide 80 years later. Would shake his head, would say, that is just physics. That is just machines following rules, nothing special about it. But it is special, not technique itself. Anyone could have discovered it given same panic and same wrong lever. What is special is what Bob did after. Tested it, proved it, shared it, then walked away from glory to fix tractors in Pennsylvania. That choice matters. That choice says more about American values than any medal or citation. Says real heroism is not seeking recognition, is doing right thing then returning to ordinary life, is serving when called then becoming civilian again without expecting permanent gratitude, is recognizing your part in larger story without making yourself center of that story. That is character. That is virtue. That is what makes ordinary men extraordinary. Not what they do in crisis. What they do after crisis passes. How they live the rest of their lives. Robert Booth grabbed wrong lever at 450 miles per hour in April 1944. 2 weeks later, it was doctrine. For next 46 years, only thing he wanted to fix was tractors that help farmers feed families. That is the legacy, not technique, but the choice to serve and share and go home and live quietly and let that be enough. Because it was. It was enough. Farm boy from Pennsylvania became fighter pilot, became mechanic, became husband, became father, became grandfather, became memory. Same path millions of veterans walked. Serve when needed, return when finished. Build life, raise family, work honestly, die peacefully. No parades, no monuments, no recognition beyond quiet respect from those who knew. That is greatest generation in summary. Did extraordinary things, came home to ordinary lives, never complained, never demanded credit, just lived and worked and loved and died leaving world better than they found it. Eleanor keeps flag pin and lucky penny, gives them to Robert Jr. with instruction to pass them down. They brought 4 generations home from war. Let them remind future generations that sometimes panic finds answers, courage misses. Sometimes mistakes become breakthroughs. Sometimes wrong lever is exactly right. And sometimes the greatest heroes are ones who come home and fix tractors and never need anyone to say they mattered. They know. That is enough.